Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary Raimondo, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, the NEPA reviews are currently required for CHIPS grants, and that could lengthen project timelines by 2 years or more from the date the department decides to start an environmental impact statement. Some NEPA reports aren't completed for 7 years or longer. When you were asked about hurdles posed by NEPA to CHIPS projects in a House hearing last month, you pointed out there's currently a bipartisan amendment to the Defense Authorization Act, which would help a lot. So we're going to do everything we can with our team to help streamline NEPA and move it as quickly as is prudent. But if Congress could pass the amendment, I think it's the Cruz-Kelly amendment in the Authorization Act, it would help us a lot to move faster. As you know, that bipartisan amendment passed the Senate with overwhelming bipartisan support, but it is not yet law. It still has to pass the House and ultimately be signed into law by the President. Could you briefly describe the benefits the amendment would provide as a word of encouragement to the House and the White House to make it law?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for your leadership on that. As you say, each of these projects, if they receive federal money, would be subject to NEPA, which could take up to years. We do not have years. These are national security imperative projects, which is why I, again, thank you for your leadership. What we are doing, we've built a team on the CHIPS team in the Commerce Department just to focus on permitting, to help companies, help states streamline the process, accelerate the process within the existing statute. Let me be clear. We don't want to, environmental concerns matter. We are not in any way suggesting that we should do anything that hurts the environment or is unsustainable. That being said, we do need to, which your amendment would do, streamline the process, speed the process, make the process more efficient and user-friendly. Interestingly, earlier today, I was on the phone with members of the House on this exact issue, encouraging them to do their own, take your lead and pass something in the House. My view is it's essential. We're going to do everything we can. We have a team. We're working on it. But without the legislation, it is very difficult.
Well, that's very helpful. Thank you. Let me turn to the topic of spectrum, something both you and I care a lot about. We all know that the United States needs more commercial access to mid-band spectrum. Recent studies project that U.S. mobile traffic to increase more than 2.5 times over the next 5 years and almost 6-fold in the next 10 years. We need a real mid-band spectrum pipeline so that the U.S. can dominate in 5G and not fall behind our adversaries. Unfortunately, access to mid-band spectrum has become almost impossible to come by because so much of the nation's spectrum is under the control of federal agencies who are resistant to sharing. The Defense Department recently completed its report on opening access to spectrum in the lower 3 gigahertz band and gave it to your department at the end of last week. The report has not been made public, but according to leaks, the report does not support sharing, let alone allowing full-power 5G use in the band. Secretary Raimondo, you and I had a very productive call yesterday, and during that call, you committed to sharing the report with me and briefing me on it. I appreciate that. Do you agree that we need more mid-band spectrum to be made available for 5G, including for full-power use, and that it is not only imperative for our economy, but also for our national security?
I do. Let me say this. As I said yesterday, I think I'd be very happy to have my staff, NTIA, and the DOD, I think we should do it together, to come and go through the report. So we'll set that up.
I appreciate that.
And yes, I do. I spoke with Secretary Austin last week, and I said, the DOD needs the spectrum they need to execute their mission, period. Having said that, we also need to be more creative and innovative about how we share spectrum and how we use spectrum, because the truth of the matter is our national defense depends on, as you say, continued private sector innovation and continued innovation in 5G. And my point to him and my point to you and anyone who wants to hear from me is that this shouldn't be a zero-sum game, right? We shouldn't think every time the DOD shares or gives something up, they're losing capacity. We have to find creative ways where we can have more spectrum be made available in the mid-range band, as you say, and also the DoD has what they need to do their mission. And I'm committed to working with you and with them to do that.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Director Panchanathan, during fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22, the NSF funded some 70 grants and 2 contracts, totaling over $45 million, focused on both the quote-unquote science of countering social media mis- and disinformation, as well as the development of digital tools to track and censor so-called mis- or disinformation. One of the projects was called Expert Voices Together, and it is, to quote the NSF, quote, creating a comprehensive system of care that addresses the harms journalists experience due to online harassment. Its mission, incredibly enough, is to, quote, support journalists in moments of crisis while helping the media industry build resilience long-term. In other words, taxpayer-funded therapy for left-wing journalists who find actual facts traumatizing. I'm sure people like Taylor Lorenz will be excited about that. But where on earth in the NSF's mandate is there a justification for these sorts of projects? And do you believe that venturing into such politicized topics undermines broader support for the NSF?
Senator, first of all, let me tell you that the reach, I hope that through the hearing today, you will get to see NSF's broad impact all across our nation through STEM talent development, through economic vibrancy that NSF makes possible, and yes, national security objectives also being fostered. I hope that the examples that I will give you, and in the answer, I'm not trying to package all of that, but I hope that that will come through very clearly. We're doing a lot of work about how to make sure the talent everywhere and innovation everywhere is energized.
Could you answer the question, though, that I asked?
Yes, I'm just going to come to that, Senator, because I just want to make sure that the NSF mission is, I just want to make sure that that is clearly understood also. I want to say one thing very categorically. NSF does not engage in censorship. We do not regulate any content and engage with anybody who also does so. But what we do is, how do the technologies operate and how are they being used, and provide the public and policymakers the information that they need so that you can make the informed decisions about needed regulations and guardrails. And for the users, that they have the tool that they can safely navigate content. That's what NSF is engaged in. That's the kind of projects that we fund. We are not in the business of censorship. We are not in the business of controlling content. I can tell you, for example, even in this conversation that we are having right now, in the deepfake realm, this conversation can be completely altered and presented in a form that you and I will say, how did it even happen? That this conversation that we're having right now has been transformed into something that's even unrecognizable. These kinds of things that happen, we are trying to find how can we build, how can we invest in those projects, and how can we invest in tools and techniques that can help safeguard. And that's all we are doing. We are not censoring. I want to repeat that. We are not altering content.
When you're funding others who are engaged in censorship, you're undermining support for your very important agency.
Senator, maybe I can close with this comment. I'm happy to work with any of you to go through this with you in more of a one-on-one setting and explain what these projects are doing so that it can be helpful. Happy to take your suggestions, happy to take your inputs. NSF, I always say NSF is a learning agency. We learn constantly because we cannot be an agency that says, this is how we do it. We are a learning agency, so happy to take the input and see where, if any, you find that there is NSF appearing to be, as I have said, we are not, but I'm happy to have the discussion with you.
Thank you.
Senator Tester.